There are superstars who scream for attention, who dominate headlines, who demand the spotlight every single night. And then there are assassins. Quiet, patient, calculated. The kind of players who don't talk much, but when the clock hits 5 seconds and the defense knows exactly what's coming, it still doesn't matter. This is the story of Joe Johnson, the silent assassin, 7-time All-Star, and forever known across the league as ISO Joey. In an era filled with flash and personality, Johnson built a career on something far more terrifying: isolation mastery. When the floor cleared out and everyone in the building knew he was about to go one-on-one, defenders still couldn't stop him. That wasn't luck. That wasn't hype. That was skill refined over nearly 2 decades in the NBA. And here's the crazy part. He never needed to be the loudest guy in the room to command respect. Joe Johnson's journey didn't begin with superstar hype. He wasn't crowned a teenage phenom. He wasn't labeled the next Jordan. Instead, he grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, quiet and reserved, pouring himself into the game. At the University of Arkansas, playing for the Arkansas Razorbacks,
Both Brandons playing today. This is Joe Johnson all the way, knifing through the defense.
he started turning heads with his smooth scoring ability and calm demeanor. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't emotional, but he was efficient, deadly efficient. In 2001, Johnson declared for the NBA draft and was selected 10th overall by the Boston Celtics. It was a respectable draft position, but not the kind that guarantees superstardom. And early on, Boston didn't quite know what they had. He was a rookie trying to find rhythm behind established players. His numbers were modest, his role was limited. Then came a trade that would quietly change everything. Johnson was moved to the Phoenix Suns, and that's where the transformation began. In Phoenix, he evolved from young prospect into legitimate scoring threat. By the 2004-05 season, he was averaging over 17 points per game, shooting efficiently and showing the league that he could do more than just spot up. But here's what people often forget. Johnson wasn't just a scorer. He could handle the ball like a guard, shoot like a wing, and post up like a forward. At 6'7" inches with a strong frame, he created mismatches everywhere. Smaller defenders couldn't contest his jumper. Bigger defenders couldn't stay in front of him. He was positionless before positionless basketball became trendy. Then came the defining move of his career. In 2005, Johnson signed a massive contract with the Atlanta Hawks. Critics immediately questioned the deal. Was he worth max money? Could he carry a franchise? Was he really a #1 option? Those questions fueled him. In Atlanta, Joe Johnson became the face of the franchise. The Hawks, who had struggled for years, suddenly became competitive. Between 2007 and 2012, Johnson led Atlanta to 5 straight playoff appearances. That wasn't accidental. That was leadership through performance. And this is where ISO Joe was born. Late-game situations became his playground. Hawks fans didn't panic when the game was close. They leaned forward in anticipation. Because they knew what was coming. Clear the side, give Joe the ball, let him work. The jab step, the rhythm dribble, the pull-up jumper over an outstretched hand. Buckets. There was something cold about the way he did it. No screaming, no chest pounding, just a calm jog back on defense. Let me ask you something. How many players can you name who made isolation basketball look effortless for over a decade? Not just highlights, not just one season, year after year. Johnson wasn't just a one-time All-Star. He was selected to 7 NBA All-Star games between 2007 and 2014. In a league stacked with talent, wings like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Paul Pierce dominating headlines, Joe Johnson carved out his own space. He wasn't louder than them, he wasn't more marketed than them, but he was just as feared in crunch time. And here's what makes his story even more impressive. He played in one of the most physically demanding eras of the National Basketball Association. This wasn't the pace and space three-point explosion we see today. Defenders could hand check earlier in his career. Paint protection was brutal. Isolation meant taking tough, contested mid-range shots, and Johnson thrived there. He averaged over 20 points per game for 6 straight seasons in Atlanta, not by hunting flashy stats, but by mastering footwork, balance, and timing. His game was surgical. He didn't rely on elite athleticism, he relied on skill, and skill ages well. After Atlanta, Johnson was traded to the Brooklyn Nets. By this point, many players would start declining, but Johnson adjusted. In Brooklyn, he became the steady veteran presence on a roster filled with expectations. He hit multiple game-winning shots during his tenure there, further cementing his reputation as one of the most clutch players of his generation. There's a different kind of pressure when you're the closer. It's not about scoring 30 in the first quarter. It's about delivering when everything tightens. When the defense switches its best defender onto you, when the arena goes silent. And Joe Johnson delivered. But like many careers, the narrative eventually shifted. Younger stars emerged, the league's style evolved. Johnson bounced between teams late in his career, including short stints with the Miami Heat, Utah Jazz, and Houston Rockets. Some critics began labeling him as overpaid. Others claimed he wasn't a true superstar because he never reached the NBA Finals. But here's the reality. Winning championships requires organizational alignment, not just individual brilliance. Johnson consistently performed. He consistently produced. He consistently showed up. And if you look deeper, his peers respected him immensely. Players knew guarding Joe Johnson in isolation was a nightmare. He had counters to every defensive move. Shade him left, he'd step back right. Press up on him, he'd drive and absorb contact. Give him space, automatic jumper. The nickname ISO Joe wasn't marketing, it was earned. And here's where the story gets even more fascinating. When most NBA players fade quietly into retirement, Joe Johnson did something different. He joined the Big Three, a half-court three, on 3 League founded by Ice Cube. Many fans saw it as a novelty league for former players. Johnson treated it like unfinished business. In the Big Three, his isolation skills became even more devastating. Half-court, slower pace, more space to operate. It was almost unfair. He dominated immediately, winning MVP honors and reminding everyone that skill never disappears. And then came one of the most surprising moments of his career. In 2021 to 2002, at age 40, Joe Johnson signed a 10-day contract with the Boston Celtics, the same franchise that drafted him 2 decades earlier. Think about that for a second. 20 years after being a rookie, trying to find minutes, he was back in the NBA. At 40, that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because your game is built on fundamentals. It happens because your body hasn't been destroyed by reckless athleticism. It happens because your IQ is elite. Joe Johnson finished his NBA career with over 20,000 points. Let that sink in. 20,000. That's not a role player number. That's not a good for a few years number. That's sustained excellence. And yet somehow, he remains underrated in mainstream conversations. Why? Maybe because he wasn't controversial. Maybe because he wasn't dramatic. Maybe because he let his game speak instead of his voice. But if you ask defenders from his era who they dreaded guarding late in games, Joe Johnson's name always comes up. There's something poetic about his career. He never chased headlines. He chased perfection in his craft. Every jab step was intentional. Every shot was balanced. Every movement calculated. Let me say something that might surprise you. In today's NBA, where isolation scoring is once again highly valued, Joe Johnson's game would be celebrated even more. His ability to create his own shot without needing a screen fits perfectly into modern spacing. His size at the wing would be even more dangerous. He was ahead of his time in some ways, and maybe that's the essence of the silent assassin. You don't always recognize how deadly someone is until years later. Joe Johnson's legacy isn't built on viral moments. It's built on consistency, on being the guy teammates trusted when the game was on the line, on delivering night after night without theatrics. 7 All-Star selections, 5 straight playoff appearances in Atlanta, multiple franchise records, over 20,000 career points, clutch shot after clutch shot. That's not accidental greatness. That's earned greatness. There's a lesson in his story. You don't have to be the loudest. You don't have to chase attention. You don't have to dominate social media. If your craft is sharp enough, the world eventually notices. Joe Johnson sharpened his craft for nearly 2 decades, and every time the clock hit 0 and the ball was still in the air, defenders held their breath, because when it left his hands, it usually meant one thing: game over. The silent assassin didn't need noise, he needed space, and once he had it, the result was inevitable.